I'm Gabby's Jules, blue sky, sort of over West London. Jules, we have our continental champions, a 5-0 beatdown in the final, completely one-sided. Your thoughts on Cruz Azul winning the CONCACAF Champions Cup? Because that's what I'm talking about.
Yes,
No, I'm
yes,
kidding.
exactly.
We will get to Cruz Azul later. Do not worry, CONCACAF Champions. We're talking about the other 5-0 beatdown, the one we were both at.
Yeah, incredible, man. I don't think I've recovered yet of that night, that final. To see my team play that way with my children and half of the family in the stands was just exceptional. In my wildest dreams, in all the PSG fans' wildest dreams, the players, Luis Enrique's, you couldn't have written a script like this, and they did. It was a masterclass, almost the perfect performance, and just a game for the ages, really.
You say almost the perfect performance, and I would suggest that what kept it from being the perfect performance is at one point, Bastoni nutmegs, I think it was, it might have been Due, actually.
Yeah, it was doing. Yeah.
And also, some of Donnarumma's kicking was not super spot on. I cannot
but
see
like-
anything else that Paris Saint-Germain stops it from being perfect.
Perfect performances don't exist. So.
But this is pretty darn close. And what I found remarkable about this is we all saw pathways for Paris Saint-Germain winning, right? But what struck me, what we did not include, and we thought they might win with pressing, possession, speed, technical ability, all this stuff. But we never thought that they would also look so much more accomplished, so much better at decision making, so much more mature. If you couldn't see the players' faces, you might have thought that, oh, Paris Saint-Germain must be the veteran, experienced side because they're doing everything right, they're completely unfazed, they're not rattled.
Yeah. Although we've seen this kind of performance before against Liverpool at home, for example, in the last 16 first leg, and yet they didn't take their chances that night, unlike what they did in the final on Saturday. But this level of performance and this sort of domination, this sort of we have the ball, you can't come near us, we can do everything we want, verticality, play in transition, keep the ball, move the ball around, the fluidity within the structure that we talked a lot on the show, which is what this team is so special about, is the mobility of all the players. If Doué comes inside, then Dembele goes on the right. Hakimi was so impressive as a left winger. There was somebody at right back when Hakimi comes in. So all of that is brilliant, but we've seen it before this season. But what the surprise came from the fact that they could do it in the final of the Champions League to start with, and also the fact that Inter didn't seem to think they'd be able to do it because they had no plan against it.
I think Inter's plan was to, having watched the previous games, was to, and Paris Saint-Germain starting so quickly, was to sit back, absorb the pressure for the first 20 minutes and grow into the game, keep the ball in midfield and so on. The problem is when you concede twice in the first 20 minutes, then that plan goes out the window. It's like Mike Tyson, everybody's a plan until they get punched in the face. That was getting punched in the face, very much so. That said, I think Inter kind of made everything worse from there on out, including Simone Inzaghi. I don't know if you agree with that, but for me, there was one potential turning point. The Marcus Thuram header, minute 37, where you thought, all right, go back before halftime, Paris Saint-Germain nerves, but he put his header wide and nothing changed. I mean, this is the only thing maybe you can slightly hang on to.
Yeah, there's the one for Acerbi 10 minutes earlier.
That was innocuous, though.
Well, in the same corner, Acerbi just slightly mistiming his jump, but then he's on his own. It's a free header and he goes over the bar, and then Marcus, at least there's a defender in front of him. I mean, not even a defender, it's Kvaratskhelia, but that can maybe just disturb him a little bit. But yeah, and set pieces was always going to be the key. But I think what's even more telling is that there's that, Gavin, you're right. If they score there, it's 2-1, and then you just don't know, although Dembele has a big chance after that too. But then at the start of the second half, where Inter have to go for it, really, they have two wide set piece to Çalhanoğlu, and both deliveries are pretty bad. One goes way at the fourth or fifth post, and the other one is too short. And these also were big moments that Çalhanoğlu didn't deliver.
Yeah, and I think it was definitely on Inter's big players when you look for them to try to get the lift. They didn't do it. Although I feel on a night like this, I don't even blame the individual players. I think they could not do it because Paris Saint-Germain would not let them do it. But we're going to break this down further on the Gavin Jules podcast. Jules, afterwards, people talk man of the match. I mean, I didn't get a vote in it this time, or any of the other 20 Champions League finals I've been to. Yeah. However, if I'd had a vote, I would have really, really struggled.
Yeah.
Because I might have just ended up giving it to Donnarumma, even though he had the least to do with the victory, simply because he's Italian. No, but seriously, like it was hard to pick somebody out. It went to Désiré Doué, and maybe it's inevitable. The goals, he was on a hat trick, he had the assist. Although, if you really want to get sort of persnickety about it, one of them was deflected and stuff. And no, but also more, it's not even being persnickety. There's so many other great performances from Dembele to Vitinha as well. I also thought it's going to go under the radar, except for people who notice that he was responsible for the second goal by keeping the ball in play. But Pacho as well. I've not been a big Pacho guy. I don't think he put a foot wrong. No, whereas Marquinhos might have had a couple moments. Always, very few. Oh, and Hakimi, of course. And by the way, Ashraf, big shout out. You only spent 1 year at Inter. You scored a Champions League final. You do not celebrate. Some people don't like that. I think it speaks to the kind of person he is, to the time he had in his 1 year at Inter.
Yeah, and by the way, he scored in the final, semi-final, quarter-final of the Champions League. That's your right back.
And he's a full back, like you said. Yeah. But in the end, it was Désiré Doué and many people. And the hype machine inevitably starts up to the
which
point
was there already a bit before, but that takes it to another level.
And Mark Ogden, who I was sitting next to, he got so excited.
Yeah.
And so he's got a piece up asking whether, Doué Yamal, stand back, Messi and Cristiano. Now, I got a sense of deja vu because I wrote a piece 3 years ago about, look, Haaland versus Mbappe. Are they ready to kind of be the next Messi versus Cristiano? Now we've just skipped over Haaland and Mbappe, because
and the others,
Mbappe only scored 40-odd goals this season,
44.
And Haaland 30-odd, and he was injured, but whatever. Like those guys are yesterday's news. It's all about Doué Yamal. All right, I'm gonna come out right now and say this. This is way premature. It's way premature for Yamal. It's not fair to put this kind of pressure. Yamal is still not even 18 years old yet, right?
Yeah.
I think it's even more premature for Doué because, and this is not a knock on him, but this is a guy who was not a fixture in the Paris Saint-Germain team really until Christmas.
Yeah.
It's his first season at a big club. Maybe we pump the brakes a little bit before we start mentioning him in the same breath, not just as Messi and Cristiano, but even Haaland and Yamal. Haaland and
Mbappe.
And Mbappe.
No, I agree with you, Gav. It's a fair point. What I would say, though, outside of the incredible talent that they clearly both have and very gifted, no puns intended with Désiré Doué's name, of course, but proper gift that they have. That is something that they're very special players, different profile, but special player. But what I am, and I don't know Lamine Yamal at all, but I'm starting to know Désiré Doué and his family and his dad and all of that. The pressure has just no impact on them. And that's what I'm amazed the most by. You can look at the talent and think, okay, yeah, they are super talented. They've been talented for a very long time. Désiré Doué started in Ligue 1 at 16. He scored his first goal in Ligue 1 at 16. So this is nothing new that he's that good. It's just that the pressure has no impact on them. They just doesn't faze them. They're not scared. They are so confident, so sure of their own ability. They can take on anybody. They feel they are, that they are the best all the time, always. And they're not, I don't think they're arrogant in that sense. They just are that kind of personalities. And that's what I find the most impressive really at that age.
Putting my football nerd hat on, another guy that I think we have to talk about is Ousmane Dembele. Again, we're talking about somebody who was super gifted, super hyped at a very young age, when he was playing almost exclusively as a winger at Borussia Dortmund. And he was excited because great movement, great athleticism, but also two-footed, like pretty obviously two-footed.
Yeah.
I don't even think if he has a preference. I'm sure he must have a preference, but like
no, I don't think so. I really don't.
So you could hit free kicks with either.
He says like really. I mean, there's that famous video that obviously from a few years ago, but still now he says like no.
So then he moves to Barcelona, and it's a very stop-start time
At 20, Barcelona. He was very young, too young.
He was very young. I mean, very young. I mean,
20.
It's older than what Bellingham was when he moved to Real Madrid, right?
Much,
different players develop in different ways. And he spends 6 years there, something like that. And he has his moments, but I think it's pretty obvious that there was a sense that, all right, you did not harness your gifts. Comes to Paris Saint-Germain, plays as a winger, people making jokes, oh, look, he's dominating Farmers League, ha, ha, ha. And then it's asked to move to center forward. Not only does he play center forward, he reinterprets the position in its own way, really along the lines of what Luis Enrique asked him to do. You know, we often talk about players not wanting to run, not being willing runners or working off the ball. He becomes a pressing machine worthy of Kai Havertz, who's always my pressing machine example, to go with the goals and the assists and everything. And I think also with his young team, obviously Marquinhos, Fabian Ruiz are the leaders. You need somebody. He's not as old as Marquinhos, but he's got much more big club experience, I think, than anybody other than Marquinhos, maybe. That's remarkable.
Yeah, I think the transformation of Ousmane Dembele is incredible. I think it's something that soon you can show young players and to see. He's not the first winger to move into a centre forward position. I mean, obviously Thierry Henry is the other massive, from a French point of view, the other massive example that we have. So it's not something rare or that's never been done before. But despite him at Rennes when he was really young, and again, he started at Rennes when he was 16, a bit like Désiré Doué, and his coach at the time, Roland Courbis, played him in that position a little bit, had clearly seen there was something there more even than a winger, but then after that, he was always on the wings. Yeah, the way he pressed Sommer, which was on Saturday night, which was a big part of Luis Enrique's game plan and tactic, was incredible. The way he plays his leadership, the way he took that leadership after Mbappe left, the way he stepped up, 45 goals involvement in 49 games in all competitions this season, just incredible numbers. And he's the best player in the best team in Europe. So for me, Ballon d'Or talk or everything you want, he deserves it. But it's more that what he has become in the last 5-6 months that I find incredible. And there's this famous bet that we talked about before with his mate, that if he first reached 30 goals, he would get 2 very expensive watches, a Rolex and a Patek Philippe. And then he played double and quit and said, actually, forget about that. What's the bet if I win the Champions League with this team? And they said, okay, if you win the Champions League with this team, you're going to get this incredible Rolex Arabic dial, which is a very rare, super expensive $500,000 watch. And guess what they gave him yesterday at the stadium when there was the big celebrations? The Arabic dial.
Who's his mate, Nasser?
No, they're also very healthy, wealthy mates that do a lot of things. But yeah, it's exceptional watch.
We've seen so many talented players hit upon hard time and lose their confidence, lose their self-belief. I mean, the fact that he clearly lost that when he was at Barcelona, between his injuries, between the criticism and everything. And then he comes back, and it's not seamless. There's bumps. There was obviously the game when Luis Enrique dropped him entirely and whatnot. To come back in this position, I cannot say enough about this guy's character, frankly. Yeah. Now, from the Inter perspective, Inzaghi spoke after the game, and look, he was very clear. He says, the only reason I'm here talking is because I respect the work that you and the media do, and I respect our fans in case they want to hear from me. But right now, I'm so upset. I just want to, go crawl in a hole, or I'm paraphrasing here. But he emphasized the fact, look, we had an incredible season. They fell at every hurdle at the end, because obviously they lost the title to Napoli on the last day of the season. They were stopped in the Coppa Italia semi-final by Milan, and then obviously they lost the Super Cup. But I think it's worth remembering that they're also doing this with a team that's still under tremendous financial restrictions. People look, they have all these old players. They are the oldest teams out of the 96 in Europe's Big Five leagues by weighted minutes. But that's also because when you sign free agents and stuff, they tend to be older. Um, I think it's a tremendous achievement what he's done, and I think he's 100%.
Yeah.
And I think they should be really, really proud. Or do we go and put this on one game where you wipe the floor? Like if he had
No.
lost this game 2-1 and it'd been much closer, would it be a different conversation?
No, you're right. But it feels, because they were humiliated on Saturday, if it fails like that. I mean, I thought the Gazzetta was so, and maybe rightly so critical and so negative about everything. And after a game like that, yeah, maybe we don't have to go back to Giannis Antetokounmpo and the failure quotes. Is it a failure season really when you reached almost a final in your league, semi-final of your cup, final of your Super Cup? No, it's not. However, they will always be remembered as the team that lost 2 Champions League final in 3 years, a Europa League final, 2 Serie A titles on the last day. And that's not nice. And they will remember more for what they lost than for what they won, despite being a great team with a great coach.
I think the legacy of this, I mean, somebody's obviously tracked Inter for many, many decades. I think this is maybe the second worst day in Inter's history after May 5th. And I don't want to get into what May 5th was, but you can go and look it up if you want. That said, I mean, you're right. He got to the hurdle. And, in the end, losing the Serie A title at least, I don't want to pick on individual players, but if Jan Bissek doesn't jump, he doesn't give away that penalty against Lazio, and Inter are champions. If Marko Arnautovic sorts himself out a little bit better, Inter are champions. And then we have a totally different conversation. So for me, I think you got to step back and you have to analyze the whole thing. In this game, he was completely unprepared. Probably would have lost anyway. Maybe not. What I do find remarkable, and we touched upon this before, is we were all presenting this final as if it was experience versus athleticism and freshness and youth, blah, blah, blah. And yet, it was experience and decision-making that let Inter down for those first 2 goals directly. Not like praise Vitinha first pass to Doué that set up Hakimi's first goal. But that is a complete misreading of the defense, especially from Fede Di Marco.
Yeah.
And then on the second one, again, I'm not going to criticize Barella as a warrior, blah, blah, blah. He has to make a decision based on experience. Do I let this ball run, or just shepherd the ball out of play?
Yeah.
Or do I think William Pacho can get to it? He made a decision based on his experience that better to let the ball go out of play, run out of play for a corner. And Pacho gets to it. And then they go up the other way, and then there's the deflected goal.
True. And there's Acerbi and Çalhanoğlu against Dembele, and they let him pass the ball crossway to Doué for the shot. And Di Marco who turns again, and Di Marco should not turn his back onto that shot and deflects it. So yeah, you're right. Big mistakes that experienced players should not be making, and they made. So how come they made them? Was it because they were not prepared, tired? Is it because they felt under pressure because PSG started the game so well? Because usually they don't make those mistakes.
Is it because sometimes we overrate experience,
Maybe.
especially vis-a-vis maybe a younger player who's very well trained, who maybe hasn't seen all these situations and he can't process it himself, but he's received very clear, obvious instructions. I know all these things come into it.
We said we discussed it together. I mean, before the final and on the show on Thursday. But PSG had been the team that ran the most in the Champions League this season. Before the final, 118 kilometers per game in average. Right, it's massive. Inter the least, but Inter then ran
92.
more. 92. But then Inter ran more in the final than PSG, and PSG only ran 105 Ks in that final.
And Inter, I think, were 111. So like that.
Because PSG didn't need to win, didn't need to run more, because they ran well, they pressed well when they had to do. Dembele, especially, as we said, to force bad passes, the 2 wide players as well. But I think he says a lot about how good PSG were and the performance in the final, to the fact that they didn't even have to run as much as they usually do in average.
Yeah, I would say they probably also ran faster than he did. But you're right. No, I think that's it's a very evident and accurate way of reading this. I want to talk a little bit about the fans, because those who've been privileged to go to Champions League finals like we have these big Tifo banners before the game. Inter didn't have one.
No.
And they didn't have one. And it was in protest at the club or more broadly, actually, at football, saying ultras are taken for granted. Right? What we bring in terms of color and whatever. So they didn't do anything. And I don't know if this is the case, but I've seen Paris Saint-Germain's tifos as well, their pregame ones in the past. What they did was fine, but I've seen far more impressive ones. I wonder if that is a sentiment to some degree shared a little bit by the Paris Saint-Germain ultras as well.
No, not for us, no.
So there is no level of repression, of isolation. They're very happy with the way.
Yeah. I mean, I've never heard anything like that, and they've done tifos.
So why was this one relative to the other ones a little more muted?
Well, no, because in your stadium you've got your the area when you can create them, build them. There's help from for example, I believe you can't hang up anything up from the top of the
stadium. They don't allow you to do that.
Yeah. So at the Parc des Princes, you can pretty much, the club allows you to do anything you want. So you can have, like we saw in the semi-final against Arsenal, this incredible tifo that the PSG Ultras did all around the stadium. You could not do that there. So they stayed with the most Paris Saint-Germain. I was going to say basic. It's not basic because it was still beautiful, but just a bit of a normal one because they could not do much more than that. And they managed to bring the flares in, and we had the lady on the mic during the game saying, "You're not allowed to do the flares." Yeah. So they're going to get obviously fined quite a lot of money, I suspect, by UEFA, but I don't think they care right now.
I think they'll get 3 fines after this, and you're right. I mean, they don't care. One for the pyro, one for the pitch invasion at the end, which
was always going to happen. I tell you that.
It was funny, and I want to praise the police and the policing on this one. So I don't know how much of this went out on television, but basically what happened is you have the medal presentation, you have the very original thing where they stand in front of the champions thing and they all celebrate. And then you have Paris Saint-Germain moving over towards the PSG end to thank the ultras for, not just the ultras, but all the fans that were over there for supporting them. And they're given instructions, do not go straight to the edge. And you had this big line of police officers in riot gear.
Yeah.
Marquinhos takes a cup and leads the players right through the barrier of police. And that was a moment where I thought, okay, the police could have said, no, Marquinhos, you're not coming through here, right? Safety, blah, blah, blah. They made a decision. I thought it was the right decision. I thought it was a rational decision. Some people will look at it and say, oh, wait, but by allowing Marquinhos and the PSG team to go down there, you had what happened afterwards, where they were right essentially at the very edge. I mean, the people in the first row could have come out and touched it.
Yeah.
Where eventually you had all the fans streaming forward and coming onto the pitch. When that happened again, they were on the pitch. I don't know if you were still out there or if you'd gone, but they were out there for a good 10 minutes.
Yeah, more than that, I think.
Even more than that, before everything was cleared away. And again, the way they got them to leave was the police officers just stood there, held their ground.
Yeah, exactly.
They weren't violent. They didn't, no batons, no threats. And eventually the PSG fans says, all right, the players are gone.
Yeah,
we're here to the corner.
They dug quite
Let's
a lot.
Go.
They dug a lot of the grass out as well to bring home.
And I thought they might have taken the goal home as well.
Well, the net's for sure. The net is gone. But yeah, it was. And then, but the players had to go back in the dressing room where I don't think they would wanted to, and wait for the ultras to go back into the stands before coming back out and see all their family members that were in the stadium. So yeah.
Final point on this really touching moment. At the end, the banner of Luis Enrique embracing his daughter, Shauna. To tell us a story about it, because not everybody's gonna know.
Yeah, if you don't know the story, Luis Enrique has 3 children, so the 2 eldest, and then the youngest one, Sana, who passed away in 2019 at the age of 9. So she was 5 when Luis Enrique won his first and until Saturday last Champions League final with Barcelona, the treble. And on that night against Juventus, she was on the pitch after the game and she planted in the pitch the Catalonia flag and the Barcelona kind of flag together in one with her dad. And Sana passed away in 2019, and Luis Enrique has created a foundation for her, talks a lot about her in a sad way, but in a very happy way too, in the sense of we can't be sad the fact that she's not here anymore, because we are too happy that she was with us for 9 years, basically. That's the message that he sends. And he didn't know, the club knew, he didn't know that the PSG Ultras had prepared this banner where you see Luis Enrique himself now planting the PSG flag in a pitch with Sana looking at him. And it was a very emotional moment. He had clearly had tears in his eyes and like red eyes. But I liked what he said after, and which is fair. He obviously thanked the fans and said how emotional he was, but also that he doesn't have to win the Champions League to think about her. And that it's actually more when he loses or when his team loses that he thinks about her the most. But it was an amazing moment to just cap what was an incredible night.
There's a documentary out there. I don't know who produced it, but he talks about how, for him and his family, they talk about her every single day.
Yeah.
And he feels that like she's a presence in his life all along. And supremely moving.